I'm Kristen Russell, and this is the Wholly Empowered podcast, where we dive into all things holistic healing and open our minds, hearts, and paradigms to new ideas so we can live our most empowered, healthy, joyful lives. Derrick Lytle, I'm so happy you're on the podcast. Welcome to Wholly Empowered. So today we have Derrick Lytle, he's known him, we go way back.
Way back.
Way back. We're actually cousins, and Derrick you're a runner, you're a videographer slash photographer. You do really cool, what are they called? I always forget what they're called. Time lapses.
Yeah.
Like, I love them. I just can't remember what they're called. Really cool time lapses. You have a podcast. Am I missing anything? I feel like you do so many things.
Yeah, wear a lot of different hats. I think people mainly know me as like a runner and a filmmaker, but I'm interested in diet, nutrition, and like photography, just stories and people in general. Like I think I'm probably a lot like you, where a lot of things are interesting to me and it's kind of hard to focus sometimes because it's like, I don't know, not ADHD by any means, but just like, oh, that's so cool. Like health is interesting or spirituality is interesting or this story is interesting. Like random things are just so fascinating all the time. But sometimes it's kind of hard to focus on one thing. So like I do wear a lot of different hats. So I am trying to like consolidate these things and be like, okay, I want to just only do this, but it's kind of hard when everything in the world is so interesting.
That's a struggle.
It is. It's a struggle. Struggle is
It
real.
is. Yeah. But and that's kind of what I wanted to. The reason I have you on is you've tried a lot of different. You're a big runner, which is interesting because we're going to talk more physical health today, I guess, and like we'll tie it in to all the other kinds, but that's kind of more the focus. And big into running, like biking. You've gotten some opportunities to do some really cool tests and different things with your physical health. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's start at the beginning. So, when did you actually start running? Because this has been a big thing for you, I feel like, for a long time. Kind of a
Yeah,
base.
it's definitely become like a huge part of my life and it's something where I never thought it would, to be honest. Like growing up, moved around a lot and my brothers and I, we just played soccer. Like that was like the big thing that we did all the time. Like lived in Northern California and that was a big thing there. And then we moved to Nevada, a little small town, and no one really played soccer, but we continued to play. And it was just kind of like, it's kind of became like a fun thing at best. Like no one cared. We took it seriously, but it was just kind of like, yeah, what's the point almost? Our team wasn't very good. It was like a small like 3A school, but it was still super fun and taught me a lot about life. And it was funny because remember one time our soccer team on a trip, we got into like a food fight on the bus, like just throwing like Cheetos and chips at each other because we were dumb like high schoolers. And the next day at practice, we all got reprimanded for it. And I think like four or five of us actually admitted to doing it, even though everyone did it. And so we all had to run 12 laps around the track, which is like 3 miles. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is absolute torture and punishment. Like, I can't believe our coach would make us do that. And that was like kind of like my introduction to running, if you want to call it that. And then years later, when I was at BYU in college, like everyone there runs, it's like active in some sense, whether that's like rock climbing or biking or whatever. But being a poor college kid, like I didn't have money for a bike and people were running. I had a roommate that didn't, they just like moved in with us kind of randomly. And he like ran a Ragnar. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And I realized that like, oh, Ragnar's like sound kind of fun, even though like he couldn't walk after he ran his Ragnar. Then my buddy and I were like, oh, we should do a Ragnar. And so we started doing like events like this. And I think my first race was the Snow Canyon Half Marathon in St. George. And like it was super fun. It was just fun to like hang out with people and like kind of push myself. And I was definitely not a runner by any means at the time, but living like right at the base of the Wasatch Mountains was just kind of like, oh, cool. Like we can go and explore and like go like quote unquote run. It was like mostly just hiking but it was just kind of exploring and checking things out. And like at that point, just kind of got this bug and I realized like, wow, people can run really far. Like that's really cool. Like I want to do that. And so then I ran my first trail race on, I think it's Antelope Island up by Salt Lake.
Oh yeah.
And it was awesome. Like I had a really good time, enjoyed the community and definitely changed my life in a million different ways where I never thought I'd be like working, creating like running content for brands and people and telling stories that way. Like I was a journalism major in college. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go like work at whatever, NBC or something. But now it's like, okay, now I'm gonna make stories about people running and filming them with a camera. And I think it's crazy. It's taken me all over the world and it's been super fun to kind of combine like this fitness level with the storytelling and camera. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like trail running is kind of your thing,
Yeah, it's kind of funny
right?
because all my running friends think now that I just ride bikes, and all my biking friends think I just run. Because I like to do both, and like they're just both fun ways to explore. And like so, I think in some ways I'm kind of like this enigma to some people. They can't kind of figure out like what I like to do. But it just goes back to like things being interesting to me. I love hiking. It's just so fun to like hike and look at things. I love running because like you just get this cool feeling from it. I love biking because you can just go super far and it doesn't hurt as bad. But like all these things are just so it's this cool way to explore the outdoors. But I say primarily though I am a trail runner and I shoot mainly like trail running stuff. But just like being outside for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we've talked a little bit about the difference between the trail running community is like its own thing. And I feel like it kind
What?
of like once you're into that, it's just like, oh, these are my people,
Yeah,
At least
definitely. And
the like one trail race I've done, I'm like, yeah, I know.
no, there definitely is like it's something that I didn't even really think about until recently, where I was at an aunt's house in Phoenix, and I don't remember why I had to go there, but we were just talking, and I had just ran a race, or I was going to run a race, and she was like, "Oh, it sounds like you just like to run for the social aspect," and I'd never really thought about that before. But it's true though. Like all like my good friends are runners, and it's we all met through running, and it's like it's just kind of weird to think about this community of people that I have. Like we're all like have different beliefs and so many different things, live very different lifestyles, but like the most simple thing you can possibly do is brought us all together as friends, and it's kind of interesting how like those things intersect that way, I guess, because in so many ways it's like, well, I'd never be friends with this person or that person, but we can go out and run and just talk about nonsense for 3 hours and it's awesome. And it's like, and you're good friends. And like maybe we disagree on politics or religion or other things, but we can kind of come together like through running, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. That's like a whole lifestyle. I feel like once you get into running, then you kind of naturally get into nutrition
Yeah.
and it all comes together.
No, that is true. It's like you become a lot more in tune with your physical body because like, you realize if I eat this, I'm gonna have a bad run the next day. If I eat this, I'm gonna feel better after my run or something. So you kind of start not even like it's almost like inadvertently figuring nutrition out because you're like, okay, I want to perform better on my run because I want to go out and run, say 15 miles, but not feel terrible. So like, how can I do that? And you just figure things out along the way. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of like figuring out this puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
know you've done a lot of keto and I don't know, listening to your podcast, you talk a lot about keto and carnivore and just like all these different, I feel like you've done all these kind of, I don't know, like I want to say like micro, like they're just barely different, but kind of a high protein is sort of seems to be the theme. And I don't know, did you ever try being vegan?
No, so never
I can't
officially.
remember.
I
Okay.
have well, I did date a girl who was vegan,
Okay.
and so like whenever I was at her house, it was like, oh, you need to eat vegan. I'm just like, okay, I guess. It was like eat like this massive bowl of salad and like hungry 10 minutes later type thing.
Yeah.
And so like honestly, like it just there's no way I could live that way because for a lot of different reasons. And like scientifically, I don't think the data support it, honestly. But then like from a just everyday perspective, it's like you're just eating a lot of just fiber. It's like you're not really eating, it's like eating rabbit food all day.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like and maybe for
especially,
some oh go ahead.
oh, just especially when you're using so many calories, it's just that's hard.
Yeah, and like I have friends that like have ran professionally being vegan and stuff. I actually did a podcast earlier with a guy who's mostly vegan. He eats eggs. And he's like, oh, I just feel better, so I do this. But he's also, if it comes down to it, I'm not 100% like till I die vegan. He's like, if I need meat, I'm gonna eat meat. And he's not very like dogmatic about it. It's kind of like kind of just rolling with the flow, I guess, or going with the flow. And which I
Yeah.
think is a good perspective on those things. But I do think it's fun to experiment with diet though, because it's like, okay, how can I maximize my health? And it's not just some say, oh, I'm healthy or healthier than you. It's just so I can do more during the day and think more clearly and have a better quality of life. And maybe like my idea of high quality of life is being able to go out and ride my bike every day. And maybe for someone else, it's just so they can pick up their grandkids. But either way, it's like if you can maximize the amount of years you have in your life, it's like, why not do that? If it's something as simple as nutrition, you're going to eat every day. So why not eat good foods that make you feel good so you can have a better life versus just slamming a bunch of pills every day and suffering all the side effects.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying, like your friend who eats vegan mostly, I feel like every body is so different and you have to kind of figure out what works for you. And seems like you've spent a lot of time figuring out what works for you. right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
that is something that I find it's crazy how cultish the diet community has become, where people are like, I'm vegan or I'm keto, I'm carnivore, I'm paleo, like X and X. There's a billion different ways that people eat for whatever reason. And people get very dogmatic about it. And it's like if you disagree with them on one thing or point out a potential flaw in their diet, they like get offended. And it's so crazy to me because like why wouldn't you want to hear like not a controversial but an opposing opinion or view or data so that way you can maximize your quality of life because maybe you're vegan but you're suffering from like anemia because you don't eat enough iron from meat. Okay, well, maybe you should introduce some iron into your diet, whether that's through a supplement or something. There's something you can glean from everybody. I feel like whether you like that person or dislike that person, there's so much you can take from them. And so, like over the years, I've experimented with all these things, and it's not like because I don't have a nutritional degree of any kind, but it's more so just learning and being interested in these things and talking to friends. Like I have friends that are like hardcore keto. I have a friend who's doing carnivore right now. I have vegan friends. And just talking to them about how they eat is just like, oh, it's really interesting. And but it really does kind of come back to that everyone's a little bit different and our goals are all slightly different. And like how I eat as like a trail runner or like a cyclist or something may not be the same way that you eat for whatever you're doing or like my parents or something because that's going to change as we age and based off things that we do. But at the same time, it's still fun just to look at data and research. It's like, oh, well, like maybe if I eat this, I don't have, I don't know, better focus or something, or stay awake if I need to stay awake, or maybe I'm staying awake too much. And like, how can I fix my quality of sleep or something?
Yeah, so many solutions. Like food is medicine, right?
Yeah, no, no, exactly. It wasn't
Yeah.
like Socrates that said that or something. Like, let food be
I
thy
don't remember,
medicine. I
but
think
someone really smart.
it was definitely one of us that said that.
Yeah.
But it is true though. Like, and I when I was on this podcast earlier with my friend Scotty, we were talking about that how like eating better you just feel better so it can be your medicine in a lot of ways. It's like okay, like if you have this deficiency it's like maybe you should add this into your diet or something. And so it is true that like food is medicine and people in at least in American culture it's like we just kind of want this like quick fix to everything like for better or for worse and it's like well I'll just go my blood sugar's too high I'll go get metformin or something. It's like well or you could cut back on like all the soda you drink every day go for a walk like little things you can do that are free and or cheap and it can improve your quality of life and I don't know, you
Improve
do
so
better.
many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Have you ever had it seems like you just like to kind of fine tune things. And I don't know, have you ever had anything like major happen where you were like, oh, I have to eat this way to recover from this or to help my body function better? Or has it just kind of been like kind of fine tuning and tuning in and
Yes and no. There wasn't like some acute thing where I'm like, okay, I whatever, like I don't know, stomach cancer. That
yeah.
just that's an example off the
Something
top of my
extreme,
head.
yeah.
Yeah, something extreme. But just like growing up though, I was always kind of like, oh, my stomach just feels a little bit off, and I just follow whatever the doctors told me to do. It's like, oh, eat more fiber, or eat more of this, or don't eat that, and it's like, okay, so you're just kind of like repeating this like generic information. I never got better. And then when I was on my mission, so I went on a mission for the church, went to Mexico, whatever. And it's like things didn't get any better, but a lot of times things got worse. We're just eating a lot of crap, like just bad food. And there's nothing against like Mexican culture, but it's like when you have to eat out of like a convenience store or something because of where you are, it's like okay, like gummy bears and chips and Coke is like it's probably not going to make anybody feel good. But that's when I started realizing like okay, I can kind of tweak my diet and feel better or worse depending on what I eat. So then when I was in college, I started thinking about it a lot more too. And it just kind of started the general thing. Okay, well, the government says to don't eat red meat, but eat these things. It's like, okay, like I didn't know anything. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go buy turkey and I'm going to eat peanut butter and crackers and bread and whatever. And granted, it's all low quality food because I'm a poor college student. But like from there, though, I was like, okay, well, if I eat a whole sleeve of saltine crackers with peanut butter, I might feel full and they taste good, but I don't feel good after. I eat like whatever top ramen or like whatever stuff, I'm gonna feel terrible after. So how can I eat something to make me feel good? So just kind of like experimenting with things. And that's how or one of the reasons why I just kind of experimented over the years. Like one is just for general health, but then once I started running, it was like, okay, how can I recover better? And so it's probably like what a lot of people do. It's like just Google stuff and just try things. It's like, how can I recover better as an athlete? Then maybe you hear the generic stuff initially, but then you get on YouTube and it's like, oh, well, here's so and so who's a medical professional as well talking about this. Like, why don't I try that? Like, what do you have to lose? Like, try something for a week. It doesn't work. It's like you're probably not going to die from just eating only meat for a week or something. Or or like not eating carrots for a week, right?
Yeah, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and like then it just became kind of fun because then at a certain point, it's like kind of reached a baseline of like, hey, I feel good most of the time, but then like, okay, like if I eat or drink this, I don't feel as good, or I feel like maybe if I have like too much caffeine, I feel very like antsy and like just not right. Okay, so I shouldn't have that much caffeine, or I shouldn't drink this or shouldn't eat that or something. And you just kind of start fine tuning things, and it kind of becomes like this game of like, how good can I feel? Which is kind of funny. Like, it's because it sounds funny.
Yeah.
Like, man, I don't want to use the term like biohack, but it's kind of that way of like, kind of quote unquote biohacking with like whole food nutrition. And like, it's kind of fun. It kind of becomes addicting. And you talk to other people and like, we should try that, or I tried this and I tried that. And then you get involved in the running and cycling world, and it's like everybody has their views on like what is healthy. And you can kind of see things like play out in real time. You're like, okay, well, this guy was whatever diet for 2 years, but now he can't walk anymore. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. It is just like n equals one, but it is still like data, and you can use that to learn for yourself, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And it is kind of like you were saying, it's kind of a game. It's kind of fun when you get to that point. I feel like you get more sensitive to how your body's
Hmm.
feeling. And then it is kind of fun to just play around with it and be like, oh, I ate this. Now I feel like this. Probably
Hmm.
won't do that again. Or or
Yeah,
whatever. Or this is really working for me. Like if I eat this before a run, or if I, whatever it is.
yeah, and I think that's like a really way, like a good way to fast track how you're gonna feel. Because if you eat like if you're out on a run, you're like, okay, I want to eat this bar or this gel, you're going to feel it almost immediately, whether you feel good or not. And then the consequence to that is like, I'm throwing up on the side of the trail or my stomach hurts or something. And like, you learn immediately like what works for you and what doesn't. And then you can, on your next run, try something else and figure things out. And like at this point, I've kind of figured out what works for me. But that said, though, I'm still open to new ideas and new science because I think it's super fascinating.
Do you have anything you'd want to share? Like, what are some of your favorite things for like pre or post run nutrition?
Oh man, kind of controversial. Pre-run, like it kind of depends on what I'm doing. I mean, like, and I feel like it's a cop out for a lot of people when they answer your question, but it does depend though. Like, if I'm gonna go for like an easy 30-minute run in the morning, I might just wake up and like just drink some electrolytes and go for a run. Like if there's zero intensity to that run, but if I'm gonna go do a workout, I always have a little bit of something before, and that could be like yogurt with fruit and honey or something, just something, but like not a lot, because you don't want something sitting in your stomach. You want to make sure your body has some fuel, and a lot of times, or I guess every time that applies to the night before. Like if you have a solid dinner that you know is going to sit well with you, then you can use that the next day for your fuel. And like the kind of having the morning breakfast is like just add a little bit something more. And then like post run, like personally, like I'm a fan of raw milk and whey protein. Like it sits really well with me, and I think it's delicious. And but if you're not a fan of raw milk, you can just try milk, but just try to buy the best quality you can afford. And that's always what I tell people is like buy the best quality food you can afford because it goes back to like food is medicine, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say the whole like using your meal from the night before to fuel a
Mhm.
little bit. I feel like often we emphasize breakfast so much. And maybe I'm biased because I'm not really a breakfast person. Like I
Mhm.
wake up and I'm like, I don't want to eat anything. And like working out fasted is actually really, especially if it's a light run like that, is like it just feels really good. And
Mhm.
so I feel like breaking out of the norm a little bit and really like experimenting is so useful because maybe breakfast doesn't work for you. Or like
Yeah,
maybe like, eating something, going for a little run and then eating something and then doing a workout or whatever. But
yeah.
just
And
being
if you think,
flexible.
yeah, if you think about it from like an historical perspective, it's like, okay, like, would you have like a bowl of Cheerios and a glass of orange juice and like two eggs before you go out and hunt? Probably not. Like you may or may not have like options for food before you go. So like the body can adapt, and especially in like a non-stressful situation, like a 30-minute run at low intensity is not gonna like add a lot of stress to your life. This is good for you. And it teaches your body like to burn fat and work that way. But if you're going to go do something intense, like say you have like a 2 hour run with like intervals in it, or you're going to run a marathon, you're probably like speaking in generalities, gonna have a better run if you eat something prior to that. And depending on like what you want to eat, that's gonna be like maybe some eggs. Like I like a couple of eggs before a run, like I feel great generally. But some people just like eating like pure carbs. It's like, okay, if that's what works for you and you think that works, like great. Like, and who am I to say that's not working if it's working for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like, and another point is sometimes it feels like not very accessible to eat healthy because people are like it's expensive, but like 2 eggs, like when you break it down, it can be really simple, especially
Yeah.
if it's like I feel like you're always like eating a steak and then you're like, I had a steak and that was it. And I went on with my life. Like, I don't know, like there are ways to just make it affordable and easy. And even if I feel like even if you're spending a little bit more, it's so much better for your health that it evens out or it like is cheaper in the long run to spend it like
Yeah.
20% more or something.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing is like, and I see these comments all the time. It's like, oh, well, I can't afford to eat meat. It's like, okay, well, like when I eat meat, generally, I'm not buying like a ribeye or something like a tomahawk steak. It's like for the past 3 days, all the meat I've eaten has just been like ground beef. I had ground beef and ground lamb or something. And it's like, those are relatively cheap. Even the higher quality version, like the grass fed finished, are still like half the price as the steak for whatever reason. I honestly don't know why. But like you can get like quality ground beef and you just have to cook it up. And like I love like burger patties with eggs on top. It's like it's so cheap and delicious. And like even buying quality eggs, like if you buy like say like middle tier eggs, like the cheapest ones at Walmart are kind of iffy. Then the really expensive like $12 a dozen eggs is kind of like, well, it's pretty intense. But you can get like kind of like middle tier that it's like, okay, those are good eggs, good quality. What do they cost? Like 50 cents a piece. If you think of like, okay, how much do like two Pop Tarts cost? Like it's gonna be either the same or more like cost wise. So you might as well eat something that's actually one, it's a whole food, has way more vitamins and minerals in it, doesn't have a bunch of hyper processed junk. And you're gonna feel better, more satiated through the day. And like that's not even thinking about how like these extra things are adding to Pop Tarts or like cereals or have been linked to like ADHD and like hyperactivity in kids. So it's like give your kids like or yourself something that's gonna actually fuel you through the day and like be nutrient dense versus something that's just gonna give you a huge sugar rush and you're gonna spike and then like or fall off after that and just be tired again and have to have more Pop Tarts
I was gonna say,
and
and
it
then you want more.
yeah and don't get me wrong like Pop Tarts at least last time I had them like they're delicious like they're engineered that way though to like
Yeah.
like a bag of Doritos. If I had a bag of Doritos, like I can't just eat one of them. I'll eat the entire bag. If I have a bag of Sour Patch Kids, I will eat the entire bag of Sour Patch Kids and probably want more. Like it's like
Yeah.
food's engineered to be addicting, but like when you're eating real nutrient dense food, like you just feel better and your body's gonna naturally know like, okay, well, I ate a pound of ground beef. That sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but like you're gonna feel so satiated after and just good because you ate real food. Maybe not a whole pound for some people, maybe like a half pound of some eggs and some whatever salad you want to have or something. Just like whole foods are going to be exponentially better for you and probably the same price, honestly. Like, I don't know. A lot of the stuff
Yeah.
is, it sounds expensive because like you'll see like some of these like nutrition influencers like, oh, you have to buy the best quality ground beef. It has to be grass fed and finished from Whole Foods or you're going to die tomorrow. It's like, okay, well, not everybody is making $500,000 a year. And if you have 3 or 4 kids, it's like you can't give your kid like a T-bone steak in the morning for breakfast every day. Like it's going to cost like $200 a day just to like send your kids to school. It doesn't make any sense. But like
Um,
if you could do like a couple eggs cooked in coconut oil or like tallow or something and give them something nutrient dense, like they're one going to perform better and they're going to have a higher quality of life. So it's like, why not? And they're not eating junk food.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lately I've been doing a lot of like the steak with the stew meat.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like the cheapest. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than a lot of things. It's easy. It's already cut up for you. And I'll make stew, but I've also used it as like a roast where I just like throw it in, throw some spices in, some vegetables, and and then it's like meal prep for a week or whatever, and it's so easy. And it's
Yeah.
pretty cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Like I remember growing up, my mom would make a roast every Sunday. And like I love this because like you get that big roast, you have like potatoes and carrots, and we had a pretty big family, so it's like and my mom didn't work, so like we were always like, okay, like what's like the best food we can eat and not gonna just break the bank, right? And so we'd come home from church on Sunday and we'd have pot roast with potatoes and carrots and to make a salad or something. It's like those are like whole foods that are super good for you and cheap. I remember then she would reuse that to like, okay, now I'm gonna make this thing with it and this thing with it because make a giant pot roast. One, it's easy, like you're saying, like in a crock pot. You just
yeah.
like basically turn it on and leave, and then you have food for at least a few days, like for a family. Like That's so
Yeah.
crazy and it's so cost effective. And I think we just kind of get stuck in this mindset that like, okay, like everything that's cheap or it's going to be cost effective is like prepackaged. But like in reality, that stuff is more expensive at the store. Like cost per calorie or cost per gram of protein is like way higher than, and it's not even like quality. Like it's just kind of junk. Like if you look at like a box of cereal, for example, like that's another thing you could eat an entire box of. Like my family always made fun of me for that growing up. Like where I could have like a box of Captain Crunch, I'd eat the entire thing. It's like
Yeah.
2,000 calories or 1,500 calories, but I'd eat the entire thing and still be hungry because that stuff is not satiating or nutrient dense. But if we would have like instead of buying that $4 or $5 box of Captain Crunch, just gave me like 6 eggs, I probably would have just ate that and then been done for a while. Just something I was just thinking of like as we were just
Yeah.
sitting or talking here is like I think a lot of people get wrapped up and like I think it's interesting like to talk about diet and like different styles of diet, but really what it comes down to with health, and this is coming from just observational things that I've seen, is just that eating basically like a whole food diet as best you can is going to make the greatest impact in your life. It's not like you have to go keto or carnivore or vegan or whatever. It's like just
Yeah.
focusing on eating real food and if like and what your budget allows. And if that's 4 eggs in the morning with a potato or whatever, like that's a great breakfast. Like if you cook it in like not a seed oil, like just real food. Like it's gonna go so much, your day's gonna go so much better eating that. And it's not like, oh well, this is vegan or whatever, whatever. It's like you're eating real food that our bodies have eaten forever, essentially. And like that's gonna be what your body's craving. It's not you're never gonna have like a deficiency in like cottonseed oil or yellow number five or something. You're gonna have a deficiency in like real protein or vitamin A or B or whatever.
Yeah. Just cutting out the processed food and like all the sugar and just cutting that out
Yeah.
and just focusing on whole foods is such a game changer. Like between just craving stuff, like I feel like when you're
Mm-hmm.
eating sugars and carbs that are processed, you just they're engineered to make you just want more, like we've been saying. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it just I feel like people start doing that and they all these health problems just go away. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah, it's like if you stop drinking Coca-Cola every day, it's like, okay, one, you're
yeah,
gonna cut, probably gonna lose weight, but then also you avoid all these symptoms that come with it, just high fructose corn syrup and just wanting to eat more and more sugar because like in general, I try to avoid eating like just like white sugar, processed sugar, whatever, unless I'm like running or riding or doing something active. And like that is like I don't know, maybe that's debatable with some people, but like I feel like I perform better when I'm having that sort of stuff. But I do notice though that like after a race, for example, if I go out and run for like 12 hours, the next day I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I want sugar so bad because I've kind of become accustomed and really addicted to just eating mass amounts of sugar. And so you're just doing that on the daily, just like a whatever monster for breakfast, and then you have Coca-Cola at lunch, and then you have like a Sprite at dinner. It's like you're just your body just wants sugar, becomes used to having all that sugar, and it's really not good for you, obviously. Like, I know it's not really
yeah.
debatable, but
Like
like it's
maybe we're just
terrible.
stating the obvious here, but
We kind
it's
of are, but it's like it's good to hear it though.
but it is. I know I need reminders even when I'm, really on track. But yeah, but like the all the little bacteria in your gut, like they feed off of the sugar and then they want more. And you have to feed the little sugar monsters, like
And and like people talk about sugar withdrawal, and really like
yeah.
that's what it comes down to is like your microbiome is like it's like crap. It influences your brain. Like your gut microbiome and your brain are connected in a lot of ways. And so
Mhm.
like when your gut microbiome is craving sugar, you feel like withdrawal symptoms is because your gut microbiome wants that sugar and you want that like endorphin release. And it's crazy. But then once you stop for like a few days, it doesn't become an issue anymore. And you can just be like, oh well, it doesn't really tempt you. But like it man, I used to eat so much sugar all the time. And like when I just like I had to like wean myself off, like, okay, like I'm gonna start drinking LaCroix. And then I started feeling a little bit better and like, okay, well now what other sugars can I get out of my life? Because like it's just so prevalent in everything. But like when you're just
Yeah.
drinking sugar, it's like it's crazy how much you can drink. And like I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means with my diet, but like
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is, and it's like whatever. But like we should try as much as we can to cut out all this stuff because it's like we were just saying, like, engineered to be addicting, and we see all the negative health consequences for it. That one are physical, but then two they impact your brain so much, and like which impacts so many other parts of your life. And it's this is crazy, like how something so simple has like bothered or affected so many people in our country and across the world. It's really sad because it's like food should be an enjoyable thing and a social thing because it's a big part of culture, but it shouldn't become like this drug and shouldn't be, I don't know, like an addicting thing that's actually hurting us versus helping us. Like we should look at food as fuel and not as like a drug or something that makes us feel like crap.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like all our food is just dead. It's a lot of dead
Yep.
food, and it's not nutritious or helpful. And like you said, you want to enjoy your food, and it should be, there's so many rituals around food and there's so many like good things. And you should like, I feel like eating comfort food is like okay. Like it's a good thing to in moderation, like we should have our things. They're like, oh, this is like a this is lovely. But
Yeah.
but our
Yeah.
food is so messed up that it makes it like dysfunctional. Like
Yeah, definitely. And I think like within social media, and this is kind of one of the negatives of social media, is like there's these like reductionist views of okay, if you just eat healthy, you're gonna live forever. Or if you are just meditating for an hour a day, you're gonna live forever. If you just do this one thing, everything else doesn't matter. It's so reductionist because it doesn't make any sense. Our bodies are so complicated, and it's crazy that when you look at all the data, it's like okay, the spiritual side of things matters, your mental health matters, your physical health matters, and all these things go together. And like there are studies showing that people who like are actively like social with people and more involved with people, they tend to live longer. And people that are more positive, have positive outlooks on life, generally will live longer. Like it's so crazy to me because they could be a smoker doing these things that we know are bad for you. But when you have this positive outlook on life, you're spending time with friends, people you care about, and you have purpose in life, it almost like kind of like overshadows all that and like puts you ahead. I'm not saying you should start smoking and drinking and doing all these like bad things, but it's like you can improve your quality of life just by like finding purpose. Like how many people do you know that are just like they're just so depressed all the time because they go work their job that they hate and they come home, just watch Netflix or stare at their phone and rinse and repeat day after day. And they're like the energy around them is like so like bad. Like it sounds so like woo woo to say that, but like people do put off energy and it matters. Like you can tell like when someone's like a positive, good person, you want to be around them because like they have this infectious personality, but like it's kind of like their energy that they put off, like this spiritual energy. And like, I don't know, like, does that make sense? Or am I just kind of like
I feel
just
like
rambling?
you're just me talking right now. Like this is something I would say. I'm like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. No, I totally agree. Like, well, they've done, oh, there was some study, I wish I had it available, but where they studied like these, basically they found that when people don't have community, like they get heart disease. There's like a direct correlation. It really does. Like all of our mental emotional stuff really affects us physically. It like
Yeah,
manifests physically. And yeah, it is hard, like as you were saying, with the just the daily grind and not connecting. It's so easy to fall into that in our society right now. Like
yeah,
I
we kind
find
of have like this.
myself looking for purpose. Some days it just does it. Even though like I love my life, I have great stuff going on, I'm social, but you just kind of wash, rinse, repeat. Like it's just, you know. And I feel like we used to live in these communities that were very, you had a lot of purpose. And now it's kind of hard to find it.
Yeah, definitely. And like even more so, like we're talking remotely right now. Like obviously we live in different states, so it's really cool that we have this technology to be able to do that. But like it's like with social media where people feel like they have all these friends, all these connections, but in reality, it's like that doesn't give you the same feeling as like walk going for a walk with somebody or like giving somebody a hug. Like there's data showing that like having hugs is helpful for you. Like just being with people that like and actually having a real community and like I don't know if you've seen anything about this, but like like when like say like there's a couple that have been married for 50 years and then like whatever the one of the spouses dies and the other one almost immediately after will die as well and they say it's because of a broken heart, but really it's just like okay, you lost something so important to you and it's kind of like what's my purpose in life now, or like people like when their children die, it's like okay, well my kids just died, now I'm just depressed and like things just go downhill super fast. It's like all this stuff is related and people want to act like oh it's like just it's all spiritual like nonsense and whatever, like religion's fake, but it's like there's a reason why like people have been so like into religion for all these years because it matters. Like health matters, the community matters. And I don't know, like it's just crazy now how like like I don't know, like from like I guess a work perspective or point of view or something. Like I know a lot of talented photographers and they're younger, they're like, what would you call that? Like Gen, I don't know, like 20 year
Z,
old
Gen
Z.
Z. I think it's Gen
I
Z.
don't know. Is it
I
Gen
was just
Z?
discussing this earlier with somebody. We're like, what's the age? So I think we're still in Gen Z if they're in their 20s.
Okay, so say they're Gen Z, just for the sake of like the discussion, because I honestly don't know like where these lines start and end. Nor does it really matter because it's just in general where it's like people want to be like get a text like, "Hey, I want to like work with you." It's like, who are you? Like I've never seen you at a race before. I've never seen you at an expo before. We've never ran together before. It's like texting somebody is not a real connection. You could just text an AI bot all day and it's the same thing as just texting an anonymous person essentially. But like for example, like when I hire people that I want to work with, almost 100% of the time, it's because I know them personally and I know they're going to work hard and do a good job. And maybe it's just because we've quote unquote networked by like going for a run together, going for a walk together or something. But it's like that matters. Like those connections matter. Like it sounds kind of crazy to say, but like the FaceTime you make with people is really, really important. And that's just from like a business perspective. So then you can kind of like, I don't know what the word would be, like amplify that or extrapolate that to just social connections in general, where it's like, if you have a group of people, like you're more willing to help somebody you know than a complete stranger, right? And then vice versa. And so like having these like face-to-face connections with people and not to just like use people, but like people want to help people that they know. Like if I break down in the middle of nowhere, like I have friends I know are going to come and get me because we're friends and that's what your friends do. But like if I just called some random person, they're going to be like, what, like what is going on? And it's like, and like maybe like strangers will help you on the side of the road or whatever, but like that's less and less common these days because so many crazy things happen or we're told crazy things happen. So like having a solid community is super important. And like whether that's a community you make through like, I don't know, like going to a yoga class or something or whatever class you want to go to, just like having some sort of social connection really matters. And it gives you purpose too. Like I have like I'm not a professional athlete by any means, but I have friends who are pro runners and like I love going to help them see them accomplish things. It's so cool and it gives me purpose and I feel good by helping them because like you care about that person, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those in-person connections are it's kind of becoming a lost art to be able to make those connections.
Definitely.
And especially with I feel like the younger generations, but I was just listening to a podcast about communication and she was saying how these like she called it like I can't remember what she called it, like weak connections or just like these little like when you just say hi to someone. Like it's just like when you pass by them every day or you just make these little baby connections. There that's like what things are built off of. That's like it's so important and we don't do it anymore because we wear iPod or whatever they're called.
Headphones. AirPods.
Yeah, AirPods. Because we
Yeah.
wear AirPods. We wear iPods in our ears. So, so yeah, we like don't do that anymore at all.
Mhm.
And it's not good. And I was thinking when you were talking about just in person, like feeling someone else's like a hug or when you're around an actual human being, it feels so different than like a
Mhm.
digital connection. And it made me think of like when I done like online dating, like back in the day
Yeah.
when I was really I do like I remember like Skyping with this guy forever who lived like in New Hampshire or something. And I was like, wow, I really like him. And then he came into town and I met him and I was like, this is not it. It's just and that happens so much with especially I feel like if you've done any online dating, you notice that like there's a missing component. There's an in-person factor that just doesn't you have to have that to get the full experience of someone's personality and just like really actually connect with them. And it's interesting. So
Yeah, it definitely is. Like I've had those experiences where like like just chatting with somebody, not even like on video, but just like whatever, like the messengers they have like in dating apps. Like, oh, this person's super cool. They sound fun, like they're funny, like whatever. You kind of feel like you have like this connection with them. And you meet them in real life and just like, oh, like there's nothing here. And it's
yeah,
so weird. And like I don't know the psychology behind that, but I think it does just show that like our bodies are designed to like actually be next to somebody and not just communicating digitally because you can't make a full connection that way. And nor is it like a lasting connection either. Cause like, I don't know about you, but like people I've met in dating apps where we've just chatted, even if we meet one time, it's like after that, I never think about them again. But if it's somebody I've actually met in person and gone on like say 4 or 5 dates with and didn't work out, I might think about them like, oh hey, like that was a good time we had together, or they said this or did that. And it's not like, yeah, it didn't work out obviously, but it's like, oh, at least I had like some sort of feeling to come from it, and not just like again, like texting an AI bot or something.
Totally. Totally. Thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying Holy Empowered, share it with that friend or on your socials. You can also hit the follow button if you want to keep up with the latest episodes. Until next time, stay empowered.